Hello everyone, and welcome to the Digital Supply Chain Hub Consortium Testbed Briefing. I'm very delighted to welcome you to today's virtual Consortium Testbed Briefing as part of the Made Smarter Innovation Digital Supply Chain Hub program. Thank you all for joining in today to learn about this testbed opportunity. My name is Jasmine Kailat, and I'm an Innovation Delivery Manager at Digital Catapult, and I'll be your host today. So I'd say let's dive right into it and look into what we're going to listen to today. Today, I'll start by giving you a short intro with what Digital Catapult is and does. Then Tim Lawrence, the director of the Hub, will welcome you with an overview of the Made Smarter Innovation Digital Supply Chain Hub. After that, I'm very delighted to welcome our keynote speaker, Mark Funnell, the director of the Digital Engineering Technology and Innovation, DETI, program, to talk about how testbeds are a game changer to demystify digital transformation. So after hearing about the Hub's objectives and goals and why testbeds are so important for digital transformation, Ben, our partnerships manager, and Kingsley, the solution architect, will tell us all about what the Hub's testbed opportunity is about, who is it for, and why you should apply. After a short comfort break, you will then have the opportunity to speak to the team and ask questions in breakout rooms, which you're pre-allocated according to the focus area you have chosen. So once we heard back from the team about what was discussed and which were the most asked questions, I will then wrap up with what you can do next to become part of this opportunity. And that will be the end of the event around hopefully 3:30. But for now, lean back and grab something to drink, a cup of coffee, cup of water, and let's get started with a short intro of Digital Catapult. We at Digital Catapult consider ourselves to be the UK authority on advanced digital technology. Our mission is to accelerate industry adoption of advanced technologies, driving growth in the UK economy. We create new opportunities through collaboration and innovation by breaking down barriers, de-risking innovation, and opening up new markets. We do this by identifying need, designing, building, and operating physical and digital facilities, creating, deliver targeted innovation and acceleration programs, convening and collaborating on research and development. Digital Catapult is increasingly seeing early adopters gain market advantage and growth through the blending of technologies. So we work where the application of these technologies can make the biggest positive impact. We believe those to be virtualization and cyber-physical systems, digital and resilient supply chains, and open and interoperable digital infrastructures. So the Supply Chain Hub program would sit under the digital and resilient supply chain focus area. So we here in the UK have a world-class tech community with over 4,000 advanced digital technology companies headquartered here, receiving over 10 billion, Jesus, numbers, 10 billion pound in funding. UK's advanced technology performance ranks third after the US and China, and yet we all have faced challenges with the adoption of those advanced digital technologies. We at Digital Catapult and in the Digital Supply Chain Hub want to put this top-ranked tech community at the disposal of the supply chain. We want to enable the supply chain and think about how we best establish an end-to-end environment that meets the needs of the supply chain. I now want to hand over to Tim Lawrence, the director of the Hub, to tell you a little bit more about the Digital Supply Chain Hub and what we do.
Yeah, thanks, Jasmine, and great introduction. So I just wanted to really give the sort of overview and big picture of the Digital Supply Chain Hub today and what we've been doing. We've been running for about 12 months now, the program, and so I started September last year as Director of Digital Supply Chain for the Catapult and lead the Digital Supply Chain Innovation Hub, which is Made Smarter Innovation program, one of a number of programs in the Made Smarter group of programs. There's also another hub called the Smart Manufacturing Data Hub, which is also fairly recently launched. So what I'm going to do is just give you a quick overview of the hub, what our aims and objectives are, and try and put a bit of context in how we see the test beds fitting into that overall program that we're running as part of the hub. So next slide, thanks. Yeah. So what is our overall objective and vision? So really, our vision is to transform UK manufacturing through digitally empowered supply chains that are more efficient, resilient, and sustainable. And I think the key things there for us are digitally empowered. So everything we're doing in the digital hub is about really how digital can really transform supply chains. And then a big focus for us is around the ability to make them more resilient. We've seen a lot of risks and issues in supply chains over the last few years, and make them more sustainable as well, with the big net zero CO2 agenda. Next slide, please. So how are we doing that? Well, the aim of the hub is really to develop and empower a globally competitive digital supply chain innovation ecosystem. So the hub is all about building the enabling ecosystem in the UK that will support manufacturing businesses in unlocking the opportunities in the digital space. So a lot of what we're trying to do is enable digital technology innovation and also adoption. So you can see on the left-hand side of this slide, things like, building more skills, digital skills, getting new digital solutions developed by companies. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the sort of bigger impacts we want to achieve through reduction in waste, improvement in reduction in CO2, but also getting greater resilience in UK supply chains. Great, next slide. So how are we going to be doing that? Well, the program we're running is a 25 million funded program. We get a 10 million grant from Innovate UK, and then 15 million of co-investment from industry, with a focus on the left-hand side of this slide. You'll see very clearly the challenges that have been defined, that we see are most important to address as part of the digital supply chain hub. Those challenges have been defined through discussions with industry, discussions with a range of organizations that we're working with, and there's two types really. One, the driving supply chain problems such as risk and resilience, end-to-end visibility, supply and demand imbalances, and there are others that we see as enablers for the whole ability to innovate across the supply chain, such as collaboration and governance. So we're really focused on addressing those key challenges, and we're working with a community of organizations and stakeholders that you can see on the left-hand side of this chart. So large industry, and we've been working, and we have sponsorship from large industry, right from aerospace through to pharmaceuticals and consumer goods. And it's good to see a few different parties from across that stakeholder group today. We're also working with SME industry, with technology startups, where we had our first open calls, and then big tech, and good to see a few big tech companies on the phone today as well, and and then universities and research centres, and obviously industry bodies. So this is the community we're working with to deliver the transformation we're looking to make in UK supply chains. So what is the hub actually doing then? So the hub is enabling this development of the ecosystem through the governance we put in place, where we have an industry advisory group giving the views and perspectives of UK industry on what we should be doing. An academic network where we're linking into academia, both in terms of their insights on an understanding of the research in the space, but also on some of the things that they're doing in terms of transforming UK supply chains. And they're pulled together through a strategic advisory board that we run. And they're also providing outreach into the broader ecosystem of organizations we're starting to work with. And to support that development of the ecosystem, we're building out a virtual hub. And that virtual hub is all about sort of a first route into the Digital Supply Chain Innovation Hub, where you can find knowledge, insights, and content on digital supply chains. We will showcase the sort of projects we're doing there, and we'll offer it as a networking opportunity for people to sort of link into what we're doing. So allowing a tech startup to find a large industry player to talk about their solution potentially, or a university to link up with an SME or something in relation to what they're wanting to do in their supply chain. So that virtual hub really is something that we are building out, and it also have tools and solutions in it where we are really looking to enable that ecosystem and how it works. And then on the bottom half of that picture, you've got our delivery projects, and that's really what we're going to be talking about a bit more today, particularly on the right-hand side, the digital supply chain test beds. But as some of you may be aware, we've launched already a series of what we're calling flagship projects. These are large consortium-based projects focused on different areas of digitization of supply chains. So we've got a program called the Differentiator, which is focused on the pharmaceutical supply chain and is working with life sciences companies and the NHS to really accelerate clinical trials in the pharmaceutical world through new digital technologies. We've got one called Logistics Living Lab, which is looking at a collaborative platform, a digital platform to enable the sharing of logistics and taking logistics miles off the roads. And we've got ones like Connected Tempest, which is looking at enabling secure collaboration across the aerospace supply chain for a program for a new fighter aircraft in the MOD and defense space. So those are the sorts of flagship projects we're running. In the middle, we've got open calls, and this is where we have a 4 million fund that we are offering out to organizations to develop tech solutions, particularly point tech solutions. And our first open call was launched around that back in May of this year, and we've got 5 projects running in that area now. Everything from a project looking at measuring Scope 3 emissions through to a project looking at how we manage better supply sensing, so assessing supply shocks and adjusting the supply chain performance to address those shocks. The second open call is what we're really talking about today, and that links into the third box on the right-hand side of this slide, where we're really looking at setting up some digital supply chain test beds, where we can really test the point solutions we're developing out of those open calls and other solutions that are available in the marketplace, against specific supply chains. So I'm just going to give a sort of very brief overview of why we think these are important now, and then Ben will pick it up in more detail a little bit later on. So next slide, please. Yeah, so we know that supply chains are under enormous pressure. I've just highlighted a number of the areas that companies are concerned about, the issues and risks they have. But one of the challenges of digitization, and you saw that the slide Jasmine presented earlier around all of the companies out in the marketplace that are developing digital solutions, is really being able to get hold of real data to test those solutions, in a live environment or a near live environment, so that they can prove and show the value of those solutions to the market, and also show how they will transform UK supply chains. So really what we're looking to do here is work with your sorts of organizations to set up these national test beds with supply chain companies involved, working with domain experts and technology providers to build out these digital supply chain test beds that can be the basis for tech organizations to be able to really showcase and demonstrate what they can do in supply chains. So hopefully that gives you a good summary. I'm now going to hand back to Jasmine. Obviously, if you've got any questions on the overview, we can talk about those in the breakouts as well. But hand back to Jasmine, I think, to move on to the next part of the agenda.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Tim, for putting this opportunity into the context of the Digital Supply Chain Hub. And I hope now you all know what we do in the hub and where this opportunity sits within the hub and why we want to do this. So now I want to welcome Mark Funnell, the Director of the Digital Engineering Technology and Innovation DETI program, to talk about how testbeds are a game changer to demystify digital transformation. Mark,
Yep.
over to you.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity, Tim and Desmond, for us to talk. My name is Mark Funnell, the head of the DETI program. The DETI program, Digital Engineering Technology Innovation Program, is actually run out of the West of England, sponsored by the West of England Combined Authority, as well as the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, as well as industry bodies. So we joined together in a consortium in order to build a foundational capability and start to launch a series of test beds and an understanding of how to demystify transformation, appreciating the risks and concerns that industry were showcasing to us at that point. So it's coming to this end of its first phase, and we are looking to launch into the second phase. But today's presentation really is going to zoom in on what we've done, what we've achieved, and how this can actually accelerate and support businesses to adopt digital. You want to go to the next slide, please, Jasmine? So this slide is something I pulled together a while back. It really is starting from why are we doing the things, and what is the problem with digital transformation, the failure modes that we see. And yes, I've put a graph in there because we're talking about data and we're talking about graphs, so don't get too concerned. I use the picture on the left, and I'm not sure whether that rings true with most people, but there is really good technology available out there on the market, and there's so much of it. And the blue line sort of indicates the amount and extent to which technology, tools, data, and the aspects around and these digital things are actually coming out on the market. And unfortunately, what our analysis is showing is the people and the business processes, especially, and especially in the small industries, are really lagging behind on how to actually adopt these and how to facilitate and incorporate these tools and techniques. So while they have the technologies, people potentially are way too busy to essentially support and adopt them and don't quite know. So we talk about these concepts of failure to land or failure to launch. The failure to launch sort of indicates there's just so much, I don't know where to start, and I have no idea what they actually offer me. The failure to land kind of concept is associated to, we have the opportunity to do test beds, or we have the opportunity to do proof of concepts. We don't quite know what the value is, and therefore it stops. And there were some figures published by Gartner and others, around 80% of activities in this space stop at the proof of concept phase, never actually get implemented in reality into industry. So if we look at those two kinds of considerations, what the DETI was doing, and the DETI, if you just click the next slide, please, Jasmine. What the DETI is trying to do and how we try to help industry is we set up these three aspects, okay? Now, the DETI itself, as you can see, is a consortium of 3 universities based out in the West of England. That's the Bath, Bristol, and University West of England, as well as the connection between 3 RTOs, research technology organizations, the Digital Catapult, who are leading the way on the Innovation Supply Chain Innovation Hub, the Centre for Modelling and Simulation, which is based out in the West of England, and ourselves, the National Composite Centre, who represent one of the 7 centres for the High Value Manufacturing Catapult. Now, the High Value Manufacturing Catapult itself has a number of large-scale assets. So we have physical facilities, which are the size and scale and shape of a manufacturing organization that you would see in reality. But obviously, we are innovation centres sponsored by government, and we are there to provide those physical assets as open access test beds, or open access data-rich test beds in this case. So a lot of the work that DETI has been doing is creating and opening up the facilities that we have, especially at the National Composite Centre, and providing data sets and providing the ability for people to come and look and utilize those assets in the right way. Okay, the Centre for Modelling and Simulation focuses its attention mainly on RT and compute capacity, high performance computing a little bit, so they also have physical assets. And the point I'm making around physical assets is people like to play with things. They like to see things in reality, working in a real environment with real data sets. And while we can't and are not a full-scale production site, the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, and in this instance in DETI, the National Composite Centre, provides people access to those assets. So they are using them to explore, test, and exploit what technologies are available to them. We then use these test beds and we show to industry how to actually demonstrate demonstrate on an industrial scale the value proposition. So test beds are there as a provision to say, come and use them and we can show you what to do. But the demonstrator is actually showing and proving out the value associated to those particular test beds. And associated to all of that, the DETI has launched a comprehensive skills program which says the people are a fundamental part of the problem, not the problem, the solution, shall I say, or the opportunity. And so we talk about the people and the processes, and that entire echelon is brought into phase on the test beds itself. Next slide, please, Tim. So these are the principles. As you can see on the left-hand side, digital is a transformation program. It encompasses tools, peoples, and processes, as we indicated in the first point. So our DETI principles for test beds are just laid out there. They are secure, as in you can come and use them and we can lock them down and we can maintain and secure your IP, or access control, cybersecurity, or credentials associated to them. You can virtually log into them, but they are physical in nature, and they relate, in this case, mainly to manufacturing, but we do have virtual test beds around design and other engineering capabilities. But they're there to support collaboration and really to learn and to teach people about what to do, and in a lot of cases, what not to do. So we like to fail first and fail fast on behalf of industry, and we act as very independent. We're not brokering, we're not selling anything here. These test beds are there to essentially allow people to collaborate and learn about what is available to them on the market and what works and what potentially doesn't work in the frame of the problem that is in front of them. So we look at two different types of customers on our test beds. All right, we talk about the end customer, those people who actually have the problem statement. And we ask them to use these test beds to set challenges. And they can do that in a number of ways. They can provide funding routes and challenge programs and bits and pieces. But they're there to essentially say, I have these problems. This is the value. This is the impact. This is the opportunity that I am trying to solve. And how does digital actually help me to do that? And what they don't want to do is to implement it directly on their production lines. So we offer these pre-production kind of scenarios. And the key thing here is that we can tailor them to represent the solutions and architectures that are available and behind their firewalls. So it looks and feels exactly like it would if they were to stop their production lines and essentially test things out. But they cannot do that for obvious sakes. And this is one of the barriers to adoption, where people find it difficult to actually get that first step going because of the impact it's going to make at their actual facilities. So we offer these development and these pre-production environments, and that's one of the principles that Testbeds is trying to do. And the other key point, I think, Tim, you pointed to it, it has to be about relevant data sets and relevant challenges. This is real data. This is stuff that's actually happening in reality, and ideally, data that's come in from the customer or client that we can then spin up on these test beds. Okay. For the technology providers, the opportunity there is that they can use these test beds and plug their own technology in. They can show how their technology competes against other people's technology. They can do it in private in the corner, or they can do it in quite a public forum. And we've also showcased that some of the test beds are an interesting marketplace. You know, the startup community is coming to show what they can do, but it's actually an interesting marketplace for the big, the big tech companies to see who's coming up through the ranks and potentially support things like mergers and acquisitions and other purchase opportunities. So it ends up being quite a dynamic environment. It is open and flexible, and we allow people to spin up different versions of these test beds depending on what they actually want to do. And that's a sort of agility and accessibility that we need to really keep in mind. It's not an easy thing to do, so we have been working at the principles and have some test beds which I just want to point to and not spend too much time on, but just take you through. So Jasmine, if you want to click through to the next one. So here's an example for those who are working in the quantum sort of area. The last time I presented this, one of the clients on the call said, "Oh, this is like snake oil. These things that you talk about, quantum key distribution and quantum. I have no clue what this technology means, but people say it's important for me." So what we try to do here, as you can see here, we worked with Toshiba and BT to try and demystify what this thing called quantum secure, quantum key distributions were. And we ran a UK first industrial deployment of this particular network using one of our machine facilities at the manufacturing site at the NCC, which was our Breda. We had a 7-kilometer link, which was plugged in with QKD on one side, Bob and I think it's called Bob and Sarah, if I'm not mistaken. And they used to talk to each other, but essentially it's supporting no entry into the data flow that's being transmitted between two sites, where you can now start to consider making decisions at an off-site location and actually driving controls of your manufacturing site from an off-site location, which happens in this case to be at the Center for Modeling and Simulation. Okay. What happened subsequently off that, the BT and Toshiba team have actually now launched the world's first commercial quantum secure metro line down in London. And they've done with Ernst & Young. So that's a really interesting success criteria. They utilized our test beds from an industrial perspective to learn a bit more and test the rigor of their technology. And they've now launched the world's first commercial network. So you can see the route to there. Obviously, on the other side, there's potential for us to get into more exploitation routes around the connected supply chains, etc. So just click to the next slide then, gentlemen. Here's another example. We have a 5G proof of value test bed. So again, we've launched first of industrial trials from DCMS. Again, it's a technology-driven test bed, but we do tend to run 3 demonstrators, and we try to showcase and give that independent voice of reason about what is good, what is not so good about 5G. Another one then, Jasmine, if you want to click to the next slide. And I think, Tim, you alluded to this. This is the Connected Tempest flagship project. This could evolve and should probably evolve into a testbed program in the future. But just an example of a challenge-led one, where we actually wanted with the industry parties to go and look at how the engineering data sets could be securely developed across. And I think that's all I really wanted to talk about today as part of the keynote. Testbeds for us have proven to be a fundamental part of how we demystify the value proposition and help technology providers as well as end customers accelerate their transformation through that knowledge access and giving them access to places that are not part of their production lines, but are really relevant and have real data sets that can make their decision making and their own internal projects kind of return on investment calculations, positive, so that they can take those first steps on their adoption. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mark, for showing us your examples. And I don't know about you, but I'm very much convinced that test beds can help to overcome risks and concerns of digital transformation and make people and processes adapt to the speed of digital transformation and use technology tools and solutions. So Ben, I would like to welcome you on the virtual stage together with Kingsley, our solution architect and our partnerships manager. And tell us about what we are offering in this area now and who this is for, why we are offering it, and why you think everyone should apply to this.
Thanks very much, Jasmine, and thanks again, Mark, for a great overview. It's so important for us to be able to see great examples of work that's been being delivered elsewhere, both across the Catapult network and beyond. So really great to see that. Thank you. So as Jasmine said, so what we're now going to do is just run through a bit more of the detail around what, who, when, and really why we think this is such an exciting opportunity for everyone to engage with. So first of all, given the context that we're looking at is really that there are many examples of test beds, as Mark's given us a few examples, but within the context that we're looking at, we're really looking at test bed here within a real world operational environment. So this is about within an actual or across an actual real world end-to-end supply chain, not in a test environment, but in a real world environment where technologies that are ready to deliver value can be deployed and tested using real data, but in such a way that it will not risk any business disruption. This is critical to the program, to the points that Tim mentioned at the beginning, moving away from small amounts of data or many synthetic bits of data or test bits of data to real world live data streams around which we can then develop solutions. And all of this to focus on our overarching mission around how we're delivering sustainable, more resilient and collaborative supply chains, which is really the core of kind of why we're existing as a program. And we want to be able to do this, to be able to gather, create, communicate, and deliver new types of knowledge across the supply chains, within the participants, and then more broadly across the UK to help really validate these existing products, services, and processes that have been, that as Mark pointed out, that may stop at POV or proof of concept. We want to really help them accelerate into the market, helping the people across the supply chains develop further and develop new skills and capabilities. And crucially, because ultimately this is why we're doing this, is to deliver real business impact in real life context. We want to use these test beds to help de-risk the adoption of technology, because we're going to be able to prove it out across your supply chains. So just to pick up on the kind of the approach that we're taking. So as Tim mentioned, we're driving all of our work based on the identification of core challenge or overcoming core challenges, which have been developed into into a roadmap of capabilities that we want to be delivering across the supply chain. So these are the areas that we're focusing on, which in many ways can be summarized into these three core elements of sustainability and circularity, the resilience of the network itself, and the ability of the participants to be able to collaborate effectively across that network. The testbed programs, as we mentioned, we're looking at 4 different types of testbeds. So the electric vehicle batteries, spare parts, food and FMCG, and new and emerging supply chains. And the reason we're doing this is we want to be able to look at different supply chains and different levels of complexity and uncertainty across the supply chain, so that we can generate learnings from these different programs and apply them across different ones. So when we're looking at spares and FMCG on a singular product level, they're quite low in complexity compared to larger, in new and emerging supply chains. Could be things like new nuclear or hydrogen supply chains, which is much more complex as an individual product, and very high value compared to the individual products around spares or FMCG supply chains. But then there's a great level of uncertainty in many large infrastructure programs based on changing environment and so on. But greater deal of certainty in kind of more consumable products in terms of their demand when it comes to things like FMCG. So what we want to be doing is really comparing these different supply chain types, generating the learnings across these, and exploring many of the socio-technical challenges and seeing how we can overcome many of those areas. And within that program, we want to be delivering solutions that can help drive sustainability, the 3 areas that we want to be delivering against across all of those different programs. We want to be delivering this then. Once we've established test beds, after the first 12 months is when we envisage it'll take to establish the test bed, and we'll talk through that process a little bit further. Kingsley will take us through that. We then want to be able to leverage all of the capabilities that we develop across the broader ecosystem and the open calls through the portfolio of digital capabilities that we're going to be developing, as Tim mentioned, through our £4 million pot of funding, but also across some of the different test beds, the different flagships we might want to be testing, which those flagships can also evolve into test beds themselves. So we would then want to be deploying these solutions into those test beds to be able to create the sort of optimization that people are going to want, well, that you as the participants within the test beds will require. And then around the test beds, we're going to be building an observer gallery of the broader industry, those who aren't able to lead the market as those participants in the test beds do, maybe more in the following mode. That will give them overview of the outputs of the program, not the nitty gritty, and they won't have the first mover advantage that the test beds will create, but it will provide them with learnings around the work that we're going to be delivering, ultimately to enable the solutions developed in the test beds to be adopted more broadly. But now I'll hand over to Kingsley, who's just going to talk us through the different areas of the test beds.
Thank you very much, Ben. So as Ben said, what I want to do now is just to kind of talk through some of the details of the elements that would kind of make up the test beds, the kind of participants that we envisage being part of the test beds, and the kind of activities that would be required. So as the test beds are looking to create a replica of a sort of real world supply chain, that's the kind of starting point for the elements involved would be the organizations that make up that supply chain. So we envisage that the test bed will be a kind of a multi-tier supply chain. So we're looking at least kind of 3 tiers within the supply chain being part of the test bed. We envisage that there'll be a kind of a lead supply chain organization that will bring together other constituents of their supply chain in order to make up that supply chain layer kind of within the test bed. So that's kind of the fundamental sort of building block of the test bed. Now, within that supply chain, and in order to try and make the test beds sort of simpler, we envisage the identification of a product and a product flow that will flow through that supply chain. So that product will need to be kind of mapped from through each of the different organizations. And I think one of the key elements of the test beds is that the supply chain can be looked at in context of the overall kind of system rather than the different individual organizations. So the mapping of that product essentially would need to be mapped through all of those different organizations as an end-to-end supply chain. The mapping of that product would also kind of identify things like the decision points, any critical control points, and the kind of data and information that is captured or generated and captured as part of that product flowing through those organizations. In addition to that, it would identify kind of where that data and that information is held, so that the systems and the data can be identified for that product flow. So in order to do that, we'd envisage that there would be some domain expert or kind of industry organization that would be able to work across those organizations in order to do that mapping. If you could click on, please, Ben. So the next element of the creation of the test bed, and as kind of has been discussed previously on this call, deploying innovative projects kind of into a production environment is not an ideal scenario. So what we'd see is that once we have an understanding of that product flowing through the different organizations and the associated data and systems associated with that, then those would be replicated into a kind of sandbox environment. So that sandbox environment we'd envisage would be kind of combination of some core infrastructure around the compute, storage, networking, etc., as well as the application and data layer associated with the kind of supply chain application and data. So the kind of key thing here is that we get a replica or representation of that end-to-end supply chain in an environment that can be played about with, can have innovative solutions kind of deployed into them. And if you could click on next. So then the final element of the testbed is the projects that would be deployed into it and the innovation that would happen. So these would be projects that happen after the creation of the testbed, and these would be the future funded projects that would be provided as part of the Digital Supply Chain Hub, and or other projects, other solutions that may be relevant to kind of deploy into the testbed and to kind of prove out the benefit that they provide. So those are the kind of the structure of testbed as we envisage it. I think one of the key points that I'd like to kind of highlight here is that this is our initial view of the construction or the way the testbed would be put together. As part of the consortium that we're kind of looking for these testbeds, then if there are other approaches, other ways of doing things, then we would be very interested to understand the different thoughts and different approaches that might be proposed in relation to this. So we can move on to the next slide. Thank you. If you could click on. Cool. Okay, thank you. So just kind of talk through the different elements of the supply of the testbeds, just supply chain testbeds. I think this is just going down to a bit more detail as to who we see the participants of the testbed being. So we've kind of highlighted that one of the key elements is the supply chain kind of members that would make up the supply chain that the testbed is kind of replicating. As I highlighted, kind of see this would be coordinated by a lead partner that would bring together other members of the supply chain into the testbed. I think one of the sort of key elements of this is that the testbeds will be created and then will be in place for a period of time so that projects can be deployed into them. So some existing relationships, some existing evidence of collaboration, organizations working together, I think is a key element here, because the testbeds are going to have their own challenges in creating them. So I think that organizations coming into them with a working relationship with the organizations that they will be working with in the testbeds is something that is worth consideration. I think the other element of it is the objectives that the testbed will achieve on behalf of the supply chain participants that are coming into there. So whether that's a kind of a focus on one of the kind of key areas that have been highlighted, but understanding kind of where the consortium would like to take the testbed is something else that should be considered as part of the consortium and the supply chain members that are coming into and building that consortium. The second kind of group of participants I'd like to kind of touch on is the technology partners. So again, kind of highlighted that there are a number of different technology elements that are likely to make up a testbed. So part of that being the core infrastructure, then also part of that being the application and the data layer associated with that supply chain. So we kind of expect potentially there would be for the core infrastructure side of things, possibly sort of cloud providers that would be interested in being part of the testbed, but then also things like supply chain solutions vendors and supply chain innovators, as well as wanting to be kind of part of the testbed and relevant to being part of the testbed. And then the third one that I want to touch on is this concept of the domain expert. So in order for the testbed to operate as efficiently as it can do, it kind of needs to be able to make available to the testbed and the projects that will be deployed into the testbed all of the information associated with with the testbed. So that will be things like the product and the product flow and the data and where the data is held, so that when we're deploying and proving out an innovation project, then all of that information is readily available. And that's kind of one of the key things that the testbeds will hopefully provide, a level of acceleration into being able to deploy and prove the innovative technology that is being put into those testbeds. And then the final one is Ben touched on the kind of when he was at the end of what he was talking about around this observer gallery. So there will be active participants within the testbed who will be actively working on the activities that are undertaken within the testbed. But then one of the ideas of the testbed is that it's a platform for acceleration and adoption of those technologies into potentially kind of other scenarios. So the observer gallery kind of participants of the observer gallery won't be actively participating in the testbed, but they will. So they won't get the direct benefits of working within the testbed, but they will get the benefits of being the sort of first in line to understand, how the testbeds are operating, the different solutions that are being deployed into them, the benefits and the impact that are being derived from the testbeds, and therefore kind of how they could potentially be applied in other scenarios that are more relevant to them possibly. So those are the kind of participants, and then the final slide that I want to talk through is just around the envisaged activities in relation to the testbeds. So as we've kind of said, the testbeds are a replica of a real-world end-to-end supply chain, multi-tier supply chain. So the starting point is that is a kind of a baseline of what is the current situation is. So that's around the supply chain and the technology and the data associated with that supply chain. It is part of that kind of looking forward as to what the consortium want to achieve with the testbed. Then there is the future state business requirements. So understanding what the goals are, understanding how or developing the common goals across the consortia, understanding how that testbed will deliver for all of those participants, and being able to kind of distill down the common elements and what all the organisations that are part of the consortium want to get from that. And yeah, and associated with that is the kind of the business modeling of that. So wanting, you know, all of the participants of the consortia and the testbed to gain some value from it, be able to participate fully in it. So being able to set the testbed up so that it can achieve that on behalf of all of the participants. Now, the difference between the kind of starting point, so the as-is baseline, the existing replica of the real-world supply chain, and the kind of the future state, gives us the delta essentially that becomes the innovation roadmap. So you know, the steps and the things that need to be in place in order to achieve that kind of future state. And that then, you know, becomes the sort of candidates for what can be achieved through, you know, future projects, future funding, and provides that kind of roadmap vision now. And then the final, you know, activity essentially is actually, you know, creating that technology environment. So replicating the data in the systems, you know, making them available with everything that is required in place, so that projects can be deployed into the testbed successfully, with access to everything they need in order for both that project but also the testbed to really understand and realize the kind of the impact and the benefits that can be achieved from, you know, not just the individual projects but the combination of projects that would make up that innovation roadmap. That's just a summary of the kind of key activities that we see as part of the creation of the digital supply chain testbeds.
Thanks, Kingsley. And so I think one of the critical things to remember around this is this, at this scale and at this kind of approach, this has never been done before, as far as we're aware, anywhere in the world. So this is going to be a world first. And as Kingsley said, we want to be shaping this very much around your own capabilities and kind of expectations. There is a natural tension between the areas of a company to focus on their own self-interest, to kind of digitalize their own operations and build out a benefit for themselves, and also and whether or not those knowledge, that information and knowledge, can be shared with the broader ecosystem, which may or may not include their competitors. And so really it's very important that this is very clear that we're not going to be sharing any kind of private information. We'll be very strict NDAs and confidentiality rules around the whole program, but this is really for companies who are ready to join us in leading the market and moving the needle in the digitalization of supply chains. And so the kind of criteria around eligibility here is very much, this is absolutely open to all, so long as you're part of a consortium, and they should represent, as a bare minimum, these criteria here as mentioned. So it's companies across at least 3 tiers in the supply chain. Got to be able to create the test bed. As Kingsley said, we've got to have these domain experts who can actually design and ensure the alignment of incentives across the test bed. So it's not just for one of the participants in the supply chain, but for all of them. And crucially, the data has got to be made available extremely securely. We're providing, for the program, we're going to be providing £315,000 to each successful consortium. And we envisage the total value of the test bed is going to be about £1 to £1.5 million to set up and run the test bed for the 2 years. So it's a sizable investment that we're looking for from industry to be able to create this. But as is clear, the benefits that will be generated from industry are going to be significant, and I'll touch on those in a second. The co-investment that will be able to be generated can be delivered through labor and overhead, so staff costs and overhead of about 20%, both indirect and direct overheads. In terms of the materials and license fees, the cost of any materials purchased, and the value of software licenses provided to the solution. That will obviously form quite a large percentage of the total co-investment from our technology partners. Subcontracting can also be included, But crucially, we want to make sure that this is specifically areas where you don't actually have the expertise within your teams, and that they're not practical to develop in-house. And again, most of the vast majority of the work should be done in the UK. So travel and subsistence, of course, there won't be any international travel, but basically just normal travel and subsistence, and then any other costs around asset utilization, preparation, etc., of technical reports and so on would be included in that. So this is kind of what will make up the kind of core co-investment. So basically, we're not expecting money, but we're expecting the time and resources and support of the participants across the program. So how will value be able to be realized in the program? Because ultimately this has to generate value for everybody. And so the underpinning principles that we're looking at here is, at the moment, there are three flows across supply chains. That we have products, we have money, and we have information flow. And the challenge that we're looking at overcoming here is, because information doesn't flow across the supply chain, products and money are wasted. And this leaves society and the environment at the moment to pick up the tab. And obviously large level of inefficiency across supply chains, whether it's FMCG food, when we're looking at 30% of our food is wasted, or looking at logistics, where we're seeing that 25% of trucks on the road are empty. There's many examples of poor information flow leading to poor flow of products and money. And so what we aim to achieve here is, through optimizing this information flow across the end-to-end test beds, we'll be able to clearly demonstrate that the financial and product flows across the chains will be optimized, generating significant value to all of the participants. So obviously this program is going to be a national program, a core component of the work that we're doing as part of the test beds, and really driving as part of the overall digital supply chain hub, where we're really going to be landing all of the investments and all of the programs into the test beds. And with the way that we're looking at this at the moment, and obviously this will develop as we go through the next couple of months of putting the proposals together, with supporting you guys to put the proposals together, but the focusing the energy on these three types of participants and the value that we want to be developing. So we envisage that you'll be able to use these to showcase different capabilities, whether it's a supply chain company, the art of the possible in your supply chain programs, for technology companies, the world-class infrastructure and applications that can be developed, and that you already have available, and then the capabilities in supply chain integration for domain experts. It's a massive market that people are looking for now, and we want to be able to help you showcase your current capabilities, doing so in a way that helps you strengthen existing and new business relationships, depending on the approach that you want to take. And then helping to access, for supply chain companies, the ability to access de-risking or de-risked new digital innovations that will be able to really drive forward the business benefits that you look for in your strategies, giving tech companies access to the broader ecosystem that we are starting to mobilize, and then domain experts looking at really how you can develop new partnerships to add greater value to your services, all with the view of accelerating, the ability for supply chain companies to deliver on your strategies, moving away from the abstract notion of a supply chain to really tangible business benefits across the end-to-end system that you could then potentially scale out beyond the test beds. Technology companies, new products, services, and then obviously new capabilities for domain experts. So these are some of the types of benefits that we're looking to. And then in the types of benefits, at the top of the line is the supply chain companies. So at the moment, many companies now are acting alone or focusing on their own node, their own business operations. And normally you can achieve maybe a 5% annual efficiency gain if you look at your own node. But given the costs that businesses are being challenged by at the moment, this is not going to keep you ahead of the increasing costs. So a key element here is when we work together as a network, And what we're seeing in different pieces of work that we're doing is you're able to start to achieve double-digit gains in network optimization, moving from a node optimization to a network optimization. And through this is looking at improved logistics, improved pick and pack, improved warehouse, improved inventory availability, and so on, when you're starting to look at the network benefits. And then beyond that, once we start to see data flow across the system, we'll be able to start to figure out new value generated from this data. And that could be insurance, reduced cost of capital across the end-to-end chain. In some cases, that can have a double-digit saving in itself across the end-to-end system. And then beyond that, things like insurance, other forms of finance, and then in the longer term, the monetization of externalities like carbon, water, waste, and the kind of financial markets being able to start to play with these new sorts of value that can be generated from this data flow and utilization across the end-to-end chain. So that's some of the benefits for the supply chain. Those are the types of numbers that we envisage we're going to be able to start to see benefiting across the end-to-end systems. And then for the technology community, obviously what this creates is a significant opportunity to generate new products and services, whether it's applications being developed to meet the roadmap or the services that can be developed on top of the solutions as per the domain experts and so on. What we're then going to be looking at is developing solutions and testing solutions across the different test beds. So opening up new markets, but crucially, as we talked about before, how we can move how we can move the solutions that are developed within the test beds into the broader market. Obviously, enabling the test bed participants to maintain and develop first mover advantages, but also then to enable the solutions developed in the test beds to be scaled out into the broader market, creating a more dynamic marketplace and helping us really move the needle on the digitalization of supply chains. In many ways, we are currently pre-digitalization of the supply chain. To meet our net zero and sustainability goals, we need to move quickly into digitalization and post-digitalization. And these new markets, opportunities we generate, we believe will play a significant role in delivering that. And ultimately, what we'd love to be able to explore as well through this program and what new business models can we start to generate for all the participants across the ecosystem that bring together the benefits of the value chain and the participants within each of the supply chains through to the benefits provided to the tech communities. What could these new business models look like? What could this new marketplace look like? And really, who is going to be the leaders in that space? We believe that the test beds will help move the market towards a much more dynamic, active, digitalized value chain that shifts from kind of extraction to regeneration. And really the time is now, very much. We've all seen the press, we've all seen the fear that that many companies have at the moment, whether it's around license to operate or access to resources to maintain and sustain the growth of their businesses. We want to get ahead of the headlines, and we really want to overcome these challenges that people are feeling at the moment in their businesses across all the different sectors that we're working with, and to collectively together really move the market forward and move the needle so that we move, as mentioned, away from the kind of extractive supply chains to ones that are regenerative, optimized, resilient, and sustainable. And we very much hope that these testbed programs will provide all participants with the opportunity to really lead the market. So that's the overview of the testbeds.
Awesome. So next steps and call for action. I don't think I need to introduce myself again, but let's round it up to what's going on next. It's so currently we are at our consortium building event, and you have learned about what the opportunity is about, why you should apply, how a testbed could look like from our side of view, and you had the chance to talk to some of us in the breakout rooms. So currently the competition has launched. The application phase is from October to November, so then 2 months, and we will share the link as well. And click. There we go. In December to January, we will have the assessment period in which our experts are going to read through your applications. We'll talk very briefly about the application as well. And then we will have presentations or interviews. We'll down select around 2 applicants, a consortium, and then there's going to be presentations or interviews with the internal judges and most likely as well an independent judge. So that is a key date. It's all going to be on the website as well, and we're sharing the presentation. After that, we're giving 2 months for the contracting, appreciating that this is going to take time as a big consortium. And then there's the testbed development phase. So we are hoping to kick off on the 1st of March 2023, with the consortium being ready to start the development of the test beds, and then we'll allow up to 3 months to work on the consortium, the collaboration agreement. After that, we'll have a showcase in March 2024 so there's 12 months time to develop the test bed, and in March 2024 we're going to showcase what has been done so far, and then there's the test bed use phase for another 12 months. So this is basically where the test bed is in operation, the technology solutions are deployed. We have, as was mentioned before, other open calls running in parallel, and we're hoping to deploy those solutions in the test beds around that time. And regarding the application form, let me just quickly, because we do want to talk to you in person or in one-to-ones around this and help you to apply, go through the application form in detail and help to figure out what we need and what we want in each of the sections. But in general, I can tell you that we have split the application form into 4 key parts around project description, objectives and outcomes, the delivery, the financial part, and the outcome sustainability. And I do want to dive deeper into this, but I also want to allow a few questions. But what are the key next steps from now onwards? So as mentioned, this is our proposed timeline, and the application form is going to be split in those 4 parts. But we have opened the application form now, and you can find all information about this opportunities and also the T's and C's in which all information needed to apply are on the website. It would be great if this could be shared on the chat now, please. And we will also share this deck as mentioned with you via email. And as mentioned earlier, we acknowledge that this is a unique but very complex opportunity, which is why we encourage you to reach out to us by replying to the email we're going to send after the event with your lead contact, and we will then arrange a meeting to discuss these opportunities for you and your consortium. However, please ensure that you meet the eligibility criteria, which was mentioned by Ben earlier. And also check the website out, check the T's and C's, have a look around. Yeah, and just process all the information you've received today. And then we're very happy to have one-to-ones with you. We're going to share this presentation, the recording, and the website link again. And then you will have the opportunity to book a meeting with us. And I want to thank all of you for joining the call today. And again, if there are no further questions, I'd like to let everyone go after listening and engaging with us for close to 2.5 hours, and hope you got inspired to apply and book in a meeting with us to discuss this even further. And you'll receive an email with the presentation, everything you need to know, and we'd be very happy if you reply to that, and we'll book a meeting.